So I think it's a beautiful pathway, but it's not something to be intimidated by because it's a path. Because even making a few little changes, even if you don't call it Ayurveda and they're just good living changes, doesn't have to be under a certain flag.
Yeah.
Anything you do that's good is great. And I always say that you don't have to think you've got to do it all.
Yeah, but do you think like do you think like we live in a society as well, and I think we navigate in a world where everybody wants a quick fix, like it's like no, I want to in 4 weeks I want to be like this person or that person, and so do you I'm sure you see that as a coach, and how do you deal with that?
I think it's really important because we are human beings that want to have positive outcomes and see positive change. It's very hard to convince people to do anything if they're not going to see the results for 30, 40 years. I don't think many of us, maybe our pensions that are sort of done in the back of our mind, that like might be something we think about. But actually, understanding the human brain and the way that motivation works, have to work on people's right there in their face problem, because yes, we can talk about, having a really beautiful journey over the next course of your life, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, however long you plan to live. But you have to always look at what is the problem I'm going to face when I wake up tomorrow? What is actually causing me the most trauma and the most pain right now? And as a coach, we always try and make sure our priority is your priority. Because that's how change happens, and it has to be relevant. So the quick fix approach, I think, is definitely it's connected into our rapidly moving world, and social media and everything that we expect these results. And sometimes I don't think that's too bad, because as long as it gets people making the changes, what you get is the side effect of having long-term benefits.
But have you seen people drop off because they didn't get a quick fix?
It can be, you can see that because of life's design. And that's why we can work a lot with your own behavior and work a lot with how to craft your own new habits and safeguarding your own practices. But you have to remember there is also a lot of societal pressures. So part of it is about understanding what you really want, and the other part is understanding why you're not there already. Because I think,
that's a good point.
If you don't know what your barriers are, and you are living in a house where most people in the house have takeaways most nights and all drink a bottle of wine together every evening, and that's just what's done, you've got to understand that you have your own willpower, but that's quite finite. So can you do something about your environment? And that's why with Ayurveda and the yogic lifestyle and what you're doing by being on the diploma, it's not just about what you're learning, it's who you're surrounding yourself with. And we're such characters that we are, I'm always described as a sponge, because I like
absolutely suck it up.
Exactly.
Suck up
and a lot of us are like that. So if there's one great thing you can do without even taking on any of the Ayurvedic principles, is doing things like with what the course you're doing, or the yoga teacher training, because you're suddenly surrounded by people that are doing the right things, and then it doesn't take effort, and it's not hard, and it's not painful, and it's not giving things up. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about going on the Ayurvedic journey, is who you're with.
No, absolutely. And who you surround yourself with, absolutely. And your environment is, I think, a really good, it's an amazing starting point for many of these, paths we're taking. And I definitely. And
I think what you said about do people get put off by not getting the little wins? One way that I could really offer to people looking at sort of change behavior sciences at the moment is you need to find your own little wins, because we might not reverse a disease or cure something overnight, but actually congratulating yourself for the little wins that you're getting throughout the day, of just having one more balanced meal a day, going out for a walk in nature once a week, like seeing those. And whether it's for some people it's having a chart that you tick off how many healthy habits, making sure they're really achievable, crafting your environment to support them, and then giving yourself some credit, because like you said, the world's pretty intense out there. And to even be asking the question, you should be congratulating yourself, because that shows a certain level of awareness. So people need to, find the little wins, because that's what will keep you on track, and that's what will make it really fun.
Yeah, and I think it's also seeing the little wins, right? Because I'm definitely someone of like underestimating myself, in a sense, like I'm doing all these things and I don't even really see them. I mean, you as my coach, I mean, you've definitely been so amazing to sort of like reflect that back and sort of like, oh yeah, I am doing the right thing here, or I am on the right track, but it's hard, I think, sometimes to see that for yourself and recognizing like, oh yeah, this is a win as well,
Totally.
and being, I think also because not only do we live in a quick fix society, we also live in this kind of like, what have you done, and are you successful, and what's on your bank account, this kind of how we see success, or achievement and failing or not failing and all that stuff. I think it's a hard world out there for all of us, really, so but like, as we said, we were thinking practical today. So if I come to you, I know what it's like to come to you, because I have, but when people come to you, like, how does all this work? Like, how does it work to get an Ayurvedic coach? How does it work? What's the process of starting working on yourself, specifically with a coach then?
So I think one of the most important things is understanding that even if it's not within Ayurveda itself, having a coach or a mentor is probably one of the best investments you'll ever make. And for me, it's life-changing, because like you said, we're too close to our problems and to our perspective sometimes, and to have someone with an external perspective is an absolute game changer. So if there's one thing people do, affordability is one thing. So you can't see someone every week, but an annual check-in with a really amazing coach or teacher, I think, is one of the most powerful changes you can invest in. Absolutely. So, I mean, within Drew, which is where you're doing your Ayurveda, so you've got the Drew Ayurveda course. There's a whole cohort of coaches, which are graduates from the fantastic diplomas that they run there. And that's how we found each other. So that's a lovely way to sort of tap into a really beautiful community there, where you've got lots of different options. I know there's lots of other amazing Ayurvedic practitioners all over the world now. It's definitely starting to pop up in a lot more places. So I would encourage you to maybe look for someone, even if it's online or if there's someone locally. And I think what's really important, like we talked about at the beginning, is Ayurveda has the 5 pathways, and different people have different specialty areas or different passions, and it's really lovely to try and look for someone who's aligned with your core values. And I would encourage you, if you go for a session and you're like, didn't really feel that you try somewhere else, because I know so many different coaches and they are chalk and cheese, completely different from one another. And it's just about finding someone that you have that connection with. Because when you're working with a coach, like, it's the most intimate relationship you can have. It's sharing everything about you. And that requires a certain level of trust, and they need to deserve that trust. So,
I think it's also like, isn't like I have a life coach. Her name is Barbara Berger. She's amazing. And she explains it like being in the same frequency. And I think, like, I feel that with you and I, we're very much on the same frequency, and then there's this energy and it just feels right. And like, it just straight away, I felt that with you. And I had a friend over the other day, and she actually was also she had a personal Ayurvedic consult, and she really didn't feel it. Hey, like, she came like, I don't really like her, and I don't know. And I was like, that's so hard, so because I do think you have to also, but that's with anything. That's exactly what you're saying. It's with coaching in general. Like, you need to, I think also people come into your life because they were meant to be your teachers, and recognizing that, and then, doing something with it, I think, is important.
And I think even finding the wrong person's part of finding the way.
Isn't it?
It's part of the journey. Like, there are no errors in the system.
Exactly.
Meeting someone, all that's helping you to learn is what you need, maybe what doesn't work so well. It's just aligning you. In a whole life, it's just us trying to find the road. That's that the right way? Is that the right way? All this feels good, and it's a constant exploration. And someone can be right for you for 5 years, and then you move into a different phase,
yeah,
and that changes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd say reach out, look for someone local, look for someone within a good community. Obviously, I know all the people within Drew are absolutely fantastic, and if maybe sort of finding a coach isn't right for you, then doing something like what you've done with the foundation course, where you get an introduction, that can be really beneficial, just to see if something clicks.
Yeah, and also I think even just any sort of, Ayurvedic foundation course, totally. If you are just, I knew I wanted to be a coach. I was like, okay, I'll do the foundation, I'll do the diploma, I'm on it, but even if you just if you have an interest in something, it's so lovely to learn the basics, right? And
totally.
And then share it with your family, and share it with your partner, or share it with your friends, I think that's and something that I was wondering, and again, 2 questions in one. Is, have you ever felt as a coach that you couldn't really be that person for the people that came to you? Like, did you ever feel like, yeah, I'm not your coach? Like, did you ever?
I have a little bit, yeah, a couple of times. I actually will usually start all my sessions by explaining sort of how I work, what you can expect, and also giving full honesty in the fact that if I don't feel that I have what you need, I will refer you to someone who I know is great in that area. And I think that's a really important thing to know, that we are who we are, and like you said, sometimes our conversation might be so that I can introduce you to the perfect person. And again, that's all about having that understanding, and it's good to work with someone who understands that. So yes, I think that's always, there are people that I'll meet and I'm like, okay, that's either incredibly medically complex and I feel like they could benefit from some of the more intensive treatments, or they have something there that there might be someone who has a specialty in that area. I'm like, oh, they would be fantastic. So yes, there is definitely some times where you just, and I don't feel like they're being authentic, and I can't be authentic with them in return.
And it's important. It's important to also, I think what is also so beautiful is that you are then always thinking of them first and then you. You know what I mean? Like, you could just think like, yeah, but I'll make the 60 pound. Like, I don't care, I'll listen to this, even though I know I'm not the person. I think it's beautiful to sort of know, like, no, like, this is not going to be valuable for them, and therefore also not for me, like, it's not going to be good for you. So that's a wonderful, because we I think I already sent you a little text message about this, and I already loved your response. I read it like 10 times, and I still read it sometimes, like, yeah, you're right. Because I had a little moment, and I have had this moment ever since. Ayurveda came into my life years ago, and already when there was something about Ayurveda that also I didn't like, in the sense that, I'm vegan, I'm ethical vegan, and sometimes it just bothers me that how can we be talking about ghee, and then at the same time talking about, like, the earth is so important, and it's like, to me that's a difficult thing to grasp, because it just doesn't it doesn't fit for me. And it was funny because we were in a session the other day, and one of the teachers was mentioning, like, but Ayurveda is not ethics. It's not about ethics, and it's not ethical. And because I think one of the students was mentioning that she has a Chinese medicine man, and he's giving her meat because she has all kinds of, sicknesses, or, some illness that, and I know a lot of doctors, and, and no judgment, and bless them. But, I think that a doctor is also quite restricted in their knowledge, because they just, like, very much think of the medicine, and think of, and think of meat, because they just don't know any better. And I felt like, for me, that was really difficult, because I'm like, Ayurveda might not be about ethics, but I am. And so when I would start being a coach, I would never describe anybody meat, you know what I mean? Like, I would never. So I think maybe I'll also be in a situation like you, and I would say, okay, I'll refer you to somebody else, like, I'm not your person, or whatever. But in general, like, I just wanted to discuss this with you and kind of hear your view, because for me, it's a little bit, it just doesn't, like, it just for me was not fitting. Like, how can we say you know, like, because Ayurveda for me it's you know, it's a beautiful science, and we are very much with nature, and nature is so important, and loving nature and being a good person and being good to nature, your environment, the animals. So yeah, you know, like, where does that sit, you know?
Well, I would definitely, from my